Hello everybody and welcome back to Safari Mack Explores North America. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to see that a majority of you have managed to get through last week's beatings with the Dall sheep, or as we know by their Latin name of Ovis Dalli, although, I can see a couple of you right now, it is not looking too good. I'm telling you, these guys mean serious business when it comes to territory and rights to females, so you do not want to take their head bumps lightly. In fact, myself, in my previous time before starting Safari Mack, I actually did volunteer at a little farm, and there was one ram that would not stop headbutting people. Thankfully, I learned a little trick to get him to stop, because he was annoying. But never mind that. We're now going to continue on. So as always, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for conservation tips and projects that you can do in your backyard. And if you have a question about animals, or if you have an animal that you would like me to do in the future, just send me an email, which you will find the link to in my description below. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started with the wild things. For starters, I know last week I said to you at the beginning that we were going to stay away from the domestication and stick with the wild, but I'd like to share a little interesting wild thing about Dall sheep, or sheep in general. They are actually considered to be one of the very first animals that we fully domesticated in terms of recorded human history. So think about that one for a minute. Now, in terms of their social life, as I told you before, as I said to you last week, males live in male herds. And then females and yearlings are what we call the young rams, which are not ready to mate yet. They will stick with their own groups, but as many as 50 sheep can actually live together in a group. Now, it's considered that the oldest member of this band that we're calling the oldest member of the band is considered to be the dominant sheep or the leader. In other related news, this species of sheep is considered to be the only wild white sheep ever known, and in British Columbia, it is actually represented on the coat of arms flag. And finally, if you wanted to know exactly how old a sheep is, just look at their horns. Similar to that of tree rings, you can actually tell the age of a sheep by looking at exactly how many rings are on a sheep's horn. Now, also another interesting thing. Do you remember how I also said last week how for males especially, their horns will grow during the spring and summer, but then they stop during the fall and winter? So if one of these horns gets broken off in a battle, it'll grow back, but it does take a really, really, really long time. Sometimes it's known to take several years. And then finally, the Dall sheep itself was actually named after an American naturalist named William Dall, who originally discovered these creatures during the 1860s and 1870s. Now let's talk about some of their conflicts and challenge. Now, in the 1900s, Westerners wanted to go after these sheep as a kind of trophy. I mean, I will admit, that horn rack, it does look pretty wicked. However, thankfully in recent years, the Champagne and Ashik First Nations group were actually able to create more tighter regulations in how to hunt these animals, and especially in the Yukon Territory. Now, furthermore, these animals seem to be doing fine because thankfully they live in remote areas. But unfortunately, as humanity continues to push forward and more into the Alaskan frontier, unfortunately, these areas are becoming a little less remote and are becoming a little more accessible for humans, which actually is causing a little bit of a disturbance for sheep populations. Even harmless bush planes that are flying over, that can actually cause them severe stress, and it can cause big problems for the sheep in future. So now, we already know what's the problem. Now we need to talk about exactly how we can preserve these creatures for the future. For starters, what we need to do as conservationists, we need to just keep out. We need to label certain areas that the sheep are living as sensitive habitats. Therefore, they can have better protections from human encroachment, as well as stricter regulations about where you're going to find them, especially if you're flying by plane, because it's just not exactly the right thing to do, is it? Another thing that's going on right now is that we can begin to we thankfully I've already said that we created stricter hunting regulations. However, we just need to keep these regulations up to date and make sure that we can all agree on how we can hunt these animals. Second, though, another thing that we could do, though, we could just, instead of hunting these animals, we could just instead be prepared just to do photography, because, I mean, as this woman was trying to do with the sheep, she's getting some pretty good pictures, and so can you. Therefore, you're not disturbing their habitat, and you are not causing the animals any harm. Because what is the future of Alaska if we don't hear that banging of sheep horns from half a mile away? I'd like to ask you that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time with me today to join me for part 2 of the Dall Sheep. But for next week, join me for a special Halloween special that I have planned all for you. Be sure to join me later on this week for the reveal of what this animal is going to be. And be prepared, for there's a few surprises along the way. But until next week, this is Safari Mack, and I'll see you all out there.